Hey YouTube, this is Chris McKee with Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. Today we're doing a comparison for you. This is another one new from Taylor. It's the 2018 814 CE with V-Class bracing. So if you've been watching this for a bit, we've done a few of these. As these guitars come in, we are going to try to do comparisons for you as much as we possibly can so that you can hear the differences between last year's model and this year's new model with the new V bracing. So let's talk about it. If you haven't seen the videos, let me give you a refresher if you have. The new guitars have a new bracing pattern from Taylor Guitars, and this is right now only on the Grand Auditorium body shapes. So that's only a guitar that ends in 4. So an 814, a K14 or K24 if it's a Koa top, 614, 714, so forth. This is going to go through the range of US made guitars, and by the end of the year you should see that through all of the series all the way down through the 314 series. And it's a major redesign from Taylor because it effectively changes the voice of the guitar by changing the engine that allows the top to move and really respond the way that it does. So we'll talk a little bit about the bracing so that you have an understanding if you haven't seen some of the other videos or anything from Taylor. Effectively, the bracing are braces, lateral braces that support the top under the tension of the strings. Standard steel strings give you around 180 pounds of pressure pulling on the top, and the vibration of those strings, when we pluck a string, the vibration moving the top, that top movement is what creates the volume, the sound that we hear. And so the bracing plays an integral part in what the guitar sounds like from a tonal standpoint and how it responds. So historically, guitars have been built, or steel string guitars, since about the mid-1800s, like this one over my left shoulder. This is last year's 2017 Taylor 814 CE. And you know, it's kind of funny for me, it's apropos, that we're doing this video with this new bracing because about 4 years ago when I started bringing videos to you guys on YouTube, the very first guitar I ever reviewed was a Taylor 814 CE, and they had remodeled it into what this guitar is. Thinner bracing, or thinner finish, new advanced performance bracing, hide glue, new aesthetic design, all of these things had been done by Andy Powers. And it was a fantastic guitar, and at the time I said, and I'll stand by this, that it basically hits way above its weight class. It is a guitar, and it's not an inexpensive guitar at $3,500, but it's a guitar that sounds like a much more expensive guitar. In other words, I've played more expensive guitars that don't sound this good. So that's a powerful statement to then say that this one is even better. And it is. It is better. That doesn't mean that that one is bad. Doesn't mean any of the X-Brace guitars that have come before it are bad. Doesn't mean any X-Brace guitar built by another company is bad. But the V bracing that Taylor's come up with really addresses some things in guitar design that fundamentally improve the instrument. So let's talk about it. So V bracing basically is what it sounds like. It's lateral V bracing that comes around the sound hole and meets here at the tail block, rather than an X brace that would crisscross here and then have some additional bracing to support it. Now, X bracing has been scalloped and tapered and straight and all sorts of things as a means to try to deal with the compromise of adding volume and sustain. So the change that Andy Powers and Taylor have done was a direct result of trying to solve those things that redesigning and tweaking X brace has been doing for many, many years. And that is create more volume and at the same time more sustain. So they do that with the V bracing. By strengthening the middle portion of the soundboard here, the top is stiffer in the middle, but it's freer on the sides. This is a symmetrical bracing with basically smaller, thinner fan braces out to the side. And it can do that because the middle part is a lot stiffer than it previously was. It's more rigid. Now, that rigidity of the middle portion of the soundboard allows it to sustain more because the top right here in the middle is actually moving less. It's kind of like a solid body electric guitar. In other words, the more you can clamp down the top, the more the string is allowed to vibrate. Conversely, the more the top moves, the more it's going to draw that vibration away from the string. So sustain is a result of rigidity. So the middle part is very rigid. The sides are freer to move because there's less bracing here in the lower bout of the guitar along either side of it. And so what this does is this allows both the bass and the treble side to have more flexibility and freedom, which equates to more volume. And I've also noticed in every V-class guitar I've played to this point that there's richer bass and treble, or mid-range, depending upon the guitar. So basically there's more of everything. So you might hear people say, well, it's a bassier guitar. Well, yeah, it's also a brighter guitar at the same time. There's just more there. So when we talk about volume, we're not just talking about loud, we're talking about that there's more of those frequencies that we listen for, the tones richer in those frequencies, and there's more dynamic range. So it doesn't just mean that you can play louder, it means that you can also play with a lighter attack and get more volume out of the guitar, which hopefully you'll see when we compare these here in a moment. Now, the other aspect that Taylor is talking about with this bracing is really more of an accident, and that's the intonation of the guitar. And intonation is usually thought of by guitar players as an aspect of the nut and the saddle and the fretboard and the setup of the guitar and whatnot on making the neck play in tune. But intonation is actually more than that. It's the true intonation or tuning of the note. How accurate to frequency is the note that you're playing? And on a fretboard and on a guitar, without going into a whole lot of depth and taking up this whole video talking about intonation, there's a lot of compromises that take place in order to make sure that this instrument plays in tune. And if you've played guitar for any amount of time, you know that it doesn't fully play in tune up and down the neck. There's certain chords that sound right, and then you'll play other chords and they sound wrong. Because particularly in the triads, where you have a third in the chord, that compromise is really showing itself, and you get some dissonance in a chord. And the truth be told, a lot of chords that us guitar players have said were complex, they're just out of tune. And on this guitar, that's been the fundamental change for me. Yes, I enjoy more volume and I appreciate more sustain, and the big killer with those is having them both at the same time, okay? You will play, I guarantee you, you can go out and find a guitar that's louder than this guitar, louder than any V-class guitar that Taylor makes. There's a guitar that's louder, but that guitar won't have as much sustain. And you can go find a guitar that has more sustain, but it will not be as loud. So finding the nice compromise between those is where these really excel. And then by accident, the order that the top now moves in improves intonation. So despite the compromises here, that's not what's changed. What's changed is that the top now responds in a linear fashion so that the overtones respond in a linear fashion with the notes that you've played. And it's cool. So and we demonstrate this for you in the comparison. Listen to the triads I'm playing down the neck. And on one guitar, you're going to pick up in the background, in the overtones of the guitar, a dissonance, a wave in the sound. And on the V-class guitar, you won't. You're going to hear sustain. Sustain of the strings and sustain of the overtones. It's cool. It's really, really cool. Someone asked me the other day on social media in the Taylor Guitar Owners Group, which is, by the way, a great group on Facebook, can I tell the difference blindfolded? I can. And not from sustain and not from volume, from the intonation. If you hand me a guitar and I don't look at it and I play it, from that I can tell you if it's got V-class bracing or not. And that's pretty impressive on its own. So really great improvements. How can you tell it's a V-class guitar otherwise? Say you're not blindfolded? Let me point out a few things to you, because these guitars look pretty much the same. There's a few things that denote it differently. Obviously the bracing, which you can't really see that well. All of the V-class guitars now have a black graphite nut. They also all have a nice headstock inlay. Look at that. And it's just continuing the inlay pattern that's on the neck. So we've saw this on the 700 series, now the 800 series, soon the 600 series, and so forth. So the other thing to look at is if you look at the label inside, it's been redesigned. And it's a beautiful label that now shows the signature of Andy Powers, and in the back watermark, Bob Taylor's signature. It's very appropriate. I like it a lot. So those are the differences and why it matters. Now, listen to the comparison and hopefully you'll hear it for yourself. Well, there you go. That's our comparison of the 2017 Taylor 814 CE versus the new 2018 814 CE with V-Class bracing. I hope that you were able to hear the difference, the nuanced changes that the bracing brings about in the character of the guitar. We're doing our very best to record these in a manner that we're not favoring one guitar or another, using the very best equipment and fighting with the compression of YouTube, but hopefully with some good headphones, you're going to hear everything. Now, if you can't, I encourage you to try one of these out in person. So I want to invite you to visit one of our stores here in San Antonio. We'll put one of these in your hand, and hopefully you can hear that, and we'll explain everything that you need. If you are looking for a new guitar, this one or something like it, I know that there's a lot of choices out there. So please go to our website at alamomusic.com, where we have the tools, the knowledge, the expertise, and the experience to help you find the perfect fit so that you get the guitar that you need rather than just a guitar that you now have. We want to help you make music, bring joy to your life and the life of others. I want to thank you so much for watching our videos. Click on that button that says subscribe, turn on notifications, and thanks for watching.